Welcome to the Colorful Clipboard, where we discuss the building blocks of making dough in childcare. I'm Kate.
And I'm Carrie.
Welcome back to Colorful Clipboard. Carrie and I are so glad that you are here. And we are going to talk about our favorite subject, parents. Okay, so maybe not always our favorite subject.
Yeah, parents is why I sold my last center. Because I was like, I can still be very supportive of my staff, of the kids, but I needed a break from parents. So that's why I quit when I did.
Well, so one of the things that we're going to talk about today is to help you kind of prep yourself for discussions that are bound to come up in the next 60 days. And we really want you to think about why what you say and how you say it is everything. And I'm going to start with tuition. Is it a monthly tuition or annual tuition?
Or weekly.
Or weekly. So this may sound like, it's just terminology, but it really makes a big difference on how you frame this next issue. So Carrie, if somebody is referring to their tuition as monthly or weekly, I personally feel like they're really setting themselves up for the issue that we're about to share. So talk to me a little bit about, or give me an example of a parent horror story related to today's issue, which, if you haven't put it together yet, we are going to talk about tuition, parents paying tuition, specifically parents paying tuition in the summer when they are on vacation.
Or at least their children are.
Yes.
Yeah. What do we do? What are the policies you need to have in place when the kids are on vacation? So I guess the horror story would be, I had a parent, everybody who listens to the podcast knows that I closed my school for 2 weeks a year because I didn't want to have to schedule people's vacation. And I wanted all of my staff to have 2 weeks of paid vacation. So I just closed the building once in the winter and once in the summer so that I didn't have to mess with that business. And people got the benefit I thought was important. And I had a parent who was so mad that they were having to pay the same tuition in December that they had to pay in November. And they'd been kind of irritated about November because, we have 2 days in a row that you're closed usually in November. So they'd been a little irritated in November about Thanksgiving and the day after not reducing their tuition. And then in December, we were going to be closed for 9 days in a row, which is a week and 2 weekends, right? We were always going to be closed for 4 of those 9 days, right? And they were so mad. And I said, but remember, we talked about this being an annual tuition. And they went, I mean, sorta. And I was like, this is an annual tuition. And for your convenience, I break it up into 12 payments. Would you rather just pay the annual tuition every year at your enrollment date? We can do that. And they got even madder at that concept that they would have to spend tens of thousands of dollars, in 1 month to pay for all of their tuition. Because they're like, well, what if I decide I don't like you? I'm like, well, then we would refund any leftover tuition, or, if you've given appropriate notice. But yeah, that's probably the worst I ever had. And they did end up pulling in like February. They were just not a good match for my program.
Yeah, so we can spend a whole other episode on parents who are the right match. And so maybe we'll let you know. But one of the things that I heard you say, and I think that it's really important for our directors, is that you frame from the get-go that your tuition is an annual tuition. And I think that's awesome. And you also really make a big deal out of your staff having that 2-week benefit, because that is something that most of our parents have. They have paid vacation. And I always felt that listening to you talk to your parents about that benefit is key. And we know that right now we have all kinds of people who are having a really, really hard time staffing in today's economy. And we have heard a lot of them talk about how benefits is the big deal. So We could talk a little bit about that, but let's come back to helping the director be prepared. So if you are currently a director who has your tuition just basically as monthly or weekly, in other words, nowhere in your paperwork have you referred to it as an annual tuition with monthly payments or monthly installments. What do they do right now in April to prep for those parents who are going to start asking them over the next 60, 90 days?
Yeah, well, but the issue is that this isn't about when you're closed, right? We're talking about when the parents want to go visit grandma or go to the beach or do whatever they want to do for vacations. This has nothing to do with your policies.
Or even sending their kids to other camps. Right?
Yeah.
Like they want to send them to a specialty camp. Yep.
Right. They want to go have their kid go to vacation Bible school or go to the Lego camp or Girl Scout camp or whatever they want to go to. And so it's a little different than the example I gave, because the example I gave was them being mad because I'm closed and they still have to pay. In this situation, there's parents who are mad because they're not going to be there and they still have to pay. So it's a little bit of a different issue. And how do we pre-frame it? So you have options. There are centers and a lot of home-based programs that they give themselves 2 weeks of vacation and they give the parents 2 weeks of vacation, or 1 week each way. And so the parents pay for 50 weeks of childcare throughout the year, prorated, however it's done, so that the parents get 1 week where they cannot enroll. They cannot be at the center and don't have to pay. So that's one option, is that you figure out what you want your annual tuition to be and then divide it by 50 weeks. And that's what they pay every week. And then if there's a week that they don't pay because you have it in your policies that they get 1 week to not be at the center at all and not pay tuition, that's an option. You can do that.
Okay. So again, I think I heard something. You have this in your policies, right? So I'm going to go to worst case scenario. We have a director listening to us, and this director had never thought about this. This director realizes that their parent handbook doesn't have anything about adjustments, right? It's either you pay or you don't pay. So I know that the center that I have the most parent excuses with, because it was a summer program, or I was there predominantly during the summer. One of the things that was really hard for the parents was, and in this case, we took over an existing program, right? So like you had parents and staff who came from a previous owner. So maybe not everything got communicated the way we would have preferred it. So basically, if people didn't show or didn't come, basically they were no longer enrolled in the program. And so then they had to pay all of the re-enrollment fees and all of that to come back later in the summer or next year, assuming that I had the staffing or that we had the space. So I didn't necessarily make any friends with that policy. But for me, that was just easy because that's what was there, right? Like that was, for lack of a better term, an existing policy.
Yeah,
but I know that
I think there's a lot of centers that have that policy. If you don't pay for your tuition that week or that month, then you're disenrolled. Mm-hmm. And if you come back 2 weeks later, the center has the choice to re-enroll you or not. But I think there's a lot of centers that don't charge a re-enrollment fee. And I think that's a problem. So if you're a center that's already up and running and your policy is that you're paying for a spot, so if you stop paying for a spot, you don't have one anymore. And I can enroll somebody else into that spot. If that parent comes back and you do have an opening, you need to charge them the enrollment fee. And I actually charged more than the regular enrollment fee for re-enrollment, because it's actually going to be harder for that child to adjust than the child who's never been there before, because the child is having a hard time remembering, what did I do here? What did I do there? It's just harder for the kids to re-acclimatize than if they'd been there the whole time.
Absolutely.
So I charged extra for re-enrollment. Also, you're insulting me. And so it was a little bit of an insult fee.
Absolutely. I like insult fees. I also like the fact that it gives you an opportunity to clean house. Again, if that family wasn't your best type of family, in other words, maybe they were late in paying, maybe they just drove everybody on staff crazy. This is a good time to not be able to take them back. Especially because usually these are the parents that also are not polite when a lot of this happens, right? They get mad, they feel like you're cheating them. I mean, Carrie, you had one of your centers had predominantly professional parents, and even those parents, you still had a few that I remember that didn't always get the concept that you were closed and that the staff had a paid vacation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so part of it is, how do I help the parents to understand that they are paying for a spot? They are enrolling in a school. If they were enrolling at University of Texas, they pay for a spot in the College of Engineering. The College of Engineering only accepts whatever it is, 500 students. So you are paying to be one of those 500 students. And if you stop showing up, UT is not going to chase your butt down. They're going to take your check. They're going to continue to pay their staff with it, but they can't enroll somebody else in the middle of the semester to take your spot because you didn't want to continue to come. And
I love that example. Okay, so that's a great example to help our directors when having conversations with parents. So again, sometimes as directors, we need an overview that our parents can relate to. So especially if you have a university in your area, you may not be a university town, but you may have one. So using that example of quarterly or annual, holding the spot or even private schools. So again, if you're not really sure that you have an apple to apple comparison in your community, go see if there's a private school. It may be a church-based private school or something else, but go find what their policies are. Sometimes they're 9-month policies. Sometimes they are annual policies.
Well, but even so, if that's not going to work for your clientele, you can also say, okay, so if you have an apartment or you're renting a house or you have a mortgage, whatever, they live somewhere, right? And so you have a lease for a year. If you're gone for a week in the middle of that of June, do you only have to pay 3/4 of your lease? No, they have to pay the whole month's lease because the apartment complex only has 22 apartments. And if you're not there, they can't lease it to somebody else. Your stuff is still in there, right? And the same is true if they're just going to be gone for a week in June from your childcare center. They still got stuff in the cubbies. There's still a cot labeled with that child's name, and it's disrespectful to the teachers and to you as the director to just wander off and not tell anybody that you're not going to be there for a week. We're like, oh my God, did they get sick? Do I need to send a gift basket to a hospital? What's happening? But no, they just didn't show up. So that's the parent who just doesn't show up because they're on vacation. But then we've also got the parent who tells you in April, oh, by the way, I'm going to be gone for 3 weeks because we're going to go visit family in India. So I'm going to go ahead and just write you the check for 1 week's tuition, and then I'll be back in August. And you're like, excuse me? No, that's not going to work. You're not coming back in August if you're gone for 3 weeks in July.
Okay, so back to helping our directors. So we have parents who are going to want to pause their tuition or freeze their tuition, whatever term they may want to use, because there are industries where people have a membership and they can do that. We are not a membership. Okay, this is not the gym. No, this is not the gym where you can put us on pause for 3 weeks. So the advantage of us talking to you about this in April is that you get to make sure that you are very clear and your staff are clear, especially administrative staff. And what is your parent handbook say? It's like, that's number one. What does the parent handbook say?
And if it doesn't say anything, now is the time to change that. You cannot change this in May. You can change this in April. Because people will be like, aha, somebody asked for vacation days if you change it in May. In April, you're not going to have as many rough seas.
But let's just say that your handbook does say that you don't get the opportunity to just take a week off in the summer, regardless of how you word it. Start thinking right now how you're going to remind parents what the summer schedule is. So if you're a program who has fallen in love with Carrie's philosophy, like I have, and you are just closed the week of 4th of July, and this year, I think 4th of July is on a Sunday. So that makes that kind
of a Monday.
Okay.
Monday.
Well, Monday's easy because it's, the week of that Monday. But when it falls on a Sunday, you got to go, do I go the week before or do I go the week after? Okay. So it's a Monday. So you would be closed roughly July 1st through July 11th. Okay. So now is the time, now being April, is the time to start talking to your staff and to your parents if the whole program is going to be closed from the 1st to the 11th. If you are a program that allows your staff and your parents to take off some vacation time, or you just know they're going to, whether they're paying for it or not, like you just know they're not going to be there. That's still really helpful, right? Even if it's just they're gone every Friday, because during the summer, dad has Fridays off. So everybody is going to be taking 3-day weekends in that family. Whatever it is, April is the time to start prepping you, your staff, and your parent communication, because we want to make sure that the parents understand whatever you need them to do. So do they need to give you notice? Do they need to give you their schedule? Or do you just assume everybody knows you expect to see everybody Monday through Friday, 8 to 6, and that you are closed July 1st to July 11th? What is happening in your program this summer?
I mean, yeah. So we want to do that. We want to make sure that we have our standard operating procedures, that we have stuff in our handbooks, and that we ask the parents, are you planning any extended vacations? And then explain what that means to you. So for some people, that means more than a 3-day weekend. For other programs, it means, are you going to be gone more than a week? I don't know what extended vacation means to you at your center, but if we can get that information in May, then we can. And if parents say, well, why do you need to know? I say, well, we're planning to do a dinosaur unit, a dinosaur camp week. And we want to make sure that we're doing the dinosaur camp week on a week when your child's here, because we know that they think that the megalodon is the best thing ever to have existed on the planet. So we want to make sure that dinosaur camp week is going to happen when they're in town. And then the parents are like, oh, that makes sense. You don't tell them, I want to know so that I can know when I can tell my staff they can go on vacation. That does nothing for the parents, and they will not comply. They will not tell you when they're planning to be out. But if you tell them it's because of dinosaur camp week, all of a sudden, this is something that they can get behind, because they're like, oh yeah, my kid's going to be really mad if they don't get to learn more about a megalodon, or, whatever the theme week that would appeal to that child. Now, in the infant room, you can't pull this trick. The babies don't care about dinosaurs or frogs or whatever subject you might want to do. But in the toddlers through the school agers, you can use that.
Yes, but let's remember, if you're on the 100 days till summer plan, you've already been marketing your summer, right? So if you're waiting till April to decide what happens what week, you've probably already missed the boat. However,
that's true.
It does make a big difference on field trips. It does make a big difference for you as a manager owner related to staffing, staff vacations, all of those things. And again, depending on how your center's community works, this may be a parent meeting. Like you may have to have a parent meeting and everybody may need to bring their calendars and their Post-it notes. This may be something that you can do via text or whatever your school's parent communication is, because you know that every parent will respond. It only takes 1 week or one parent to drive you absolutely crazy. I know that Mondays being fully staffed but having 3 kids is a problem.
Well, also, like it's also that whole you're planning, you've got your summer activity planned and you're waiting to start the activity because you're supposed to have 22 kids in this class and there are 16 of them. And so the teacher is just like treading water because they're waiting for the other 6 kids. And it's just really rough on the teacher. But again, and then we use that as the reason, the parents aren't going to respond.
And it's very disruptive to the kids if the kid shows up late and missed the activity because they were tired, mom and dad were tired. I mean, let's be realistic. We're all tired that day after a vacation, right? So even if you're only gone until the 11th, what are the chances of you really making it back on the 11th on time? Let's be like, I'm so tired from doing the laundry on the trip, from the trip. So, again, if this is your first year, you may not have these horror stories yet. So ask the staff who may have been there before. If this is not your first year and the last 3 years, because I'm going to go back to 3 years ago, right? So summer 2019, what was your summer 2019 like? What has your spring been like? What was spring break like? Like, was everybody and their brother like all like crazed? Because more and more people are already seeing people on vacation. Twice as many people are going on vacation than have been on vacation in 2019. And so chances are you've got parents and families that have gone stir crazy, right? Like who hasn't, right? We're all just a little like, ooh. So we're all ready for that break. And you just need to make sure that you've thought through every scenario with those parents.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that if we're talking to somebody who this conversation has just made them go, oh my goodness, what if parents are going to be mad at me because we're going to be closed for X number of days for 4th of July or whatever. And they haven't had to have one of these conversations because they were hired after Thanksgiving. I just want us to sort of
anytime in the last 2 years, because again, if you've only been a director since September of 2019 to present, you've not had a normal summer.
Yep, absolutely. So what are some of the things, we gave examples of pre-framing it ahead of time and saying, this is an annual tuition, but if you're new, you didn't set this up and all these people are already enrolled and they think they have weekly or monthly tuition. So how do you explain to somebody who's mad about paying full tuition in, the week that you're closed 2 days? How do you have that conversation if the parents think I just pay weekly tuition? So this week I'm only bringing my kid 3 days, so I should only have to pay 3/5 of the tuition. I should get a discount this week.
So I'm going to start with my personal viewpoint. And a lot of this comes back to understanding the culture of your parents and any structure. So some of our schools have the equivalent of a PTO. Some of our schools have regular parent communication and parent meetings. In that situation, especially if you've got some analytical parents or parents that every other parent looks up to, like that just makes your life easy because that parent can say something and everybody goes, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so sometimes what you need to have said isn't going to mean diddly if it's coming from you. But if one of the parents can say, well, I want my teacher to have a paid vacation, then it's kind of a no-brainer, right? Because like what parent is going to sit here and argue in a public parent meeting about their kid's teacher getting a paid vacation? That's a little tacky. Like if you're that person, do you want to be that person? So, Carrie's got email. Okay. So you've got mail. So all those things that one little ding does. Okay.
So, So yeah, what if you're not going to have a parent meeting? Like you've just got a parent who walks in and hands you a check that is supposed to be $150 for the week. And instead they give you a check for $75 because they're like, well, I'm picking them up at noon on Wednesday this week. So here's the check for $75.
Yeah, see, this is why I'm telling everybody to be prepped in April so that they don't have to do that. I don't know if I would have a very tactful response because honestly, in my situation, I feel like anytime I've had this, my parents knew what the policy was. Like there was, if you're not going to come one week, when I had a registered family home, you had to let me know 2 weeks in advance. Now, I took drop-in kids, and that was part of the reason why I needed to know 2 weeks in advance, because if you're not going to be there for a week, I want to be able to have somebody else use your space. Okay. Now, granted, with a registered family home, if I was going to be sick or my child decided to be sick, I couldn't necessarily give people 2 weeks notice because I don't necessarily know in advance when I'm going.
You didn't plan that appendicitis?
No.
I thought you planned that.
No. But in that same sense, it's the same thing that parents, I've had parents do that when their kids are sick, right? Like, well, my kid was sick, so I was only here one day. Don't I have a credit from last week? So, you have to know what you're comfortable with and you have to know what you're willing to allow. Are you willing to allow, a hospital stay? Are you willing to forgive? They had to go out of town because grandma is really, really sick. I mean, you have to think of these things in advance so that you can be prepared and not make a decision and then somebody else catches you in that, and then you got to do it again.
Yeah. So that's why that becomes a standard operating procedure and it goes in the notebook, right? That, okay, if a child has to be out for a time because their grandparent is really sick, they're going to have to be out the whole week. They can't come back on Thursday. They're going to have to be out the whole week and we're not going to charge tuition for that week. And then that goes in your SOPs. Because what I hate more than a lot of other things is I hate it when they tell me on Friday that they're not going to be there next week and then they show up on Tuesday. Excuse me, I have made plans based on having fewer kids in this class, or I have taken a drop-in enrollment because you're not going to be there. Somebody's cousin is in town because it's the summer and cousins are visiting. So sure, the cousin can come take the spot. And then the kid shows up on Tuesday and you're just like, oh my goodness, now I have more kids than I legally can have. What am I supposed to do? Or maybe you're not butting against licensing numbers, but more kids than you told your teacher they were going to have to deal with.
Well, yeah, you got the same thing when field trips. Summer, there's always something happening. Like every day of the week, there's something really cool happening. So it drives me crazy when people show up late, okay, or show up late and still haven't eaten breakfast. That's just about it. That's even worse, right? Or they show up and you've already left for the field trip. This is the stuff that just will drive a director crazy.
So we're just trying to get you thinking about this ahead of time. So Kate's answer is if they give you a check on Monday for half of what tuition is supposed to be, because they say they're picking them up at noon on Wednesday, your answer, she never said what her answer would be. My guess is that she's going to probably say, oh, so you're disenrolling. Knowing Kate, she's going to tell them, oh, so you're disenrolling and I'll go ahead and pack up all your kids' stuff on Wednesday so that you're ready to go. Do you want a copy of your file? My guess is that Kate would do something like that. And then the parent would go, no, I'm just not going to be here the second half of the week. And they go, well, but you're paying for your enrollment in the class. So either you're enrolled and you're paying tuition, or you're not enrolled and you're not paying tuition. Which one are we doing here? So how gentle or rough you're going to be with that is up to you. I would probably handle it much more I'm very confused. Let me look at our contract, because I don't remember that being in the contract. Do you remember that being in the contract? And then I would take out their contract and I would look at it and I said, I don't see that in the contract. Can you show me in this contract that you signed where it says you can pay partial tuition for a week, which works really well if you're taking over for somebody else who enrolled them. Is like, was there something different in your contract than the standard contract? Let's go look at it. And then you can play dumb, and then they have to prove to you that they have a legal right to pay you less. And then they're like, oh no. Usually, if you do that, then they're like, oh no. Other parent, insert other parent's name here, told me that we were only paying half tuition this week. Like, well, so does that mean they're going to be paying the other half today by noon so that you don't have late fees? Is that what's happening here? And so I have a tendency to do a lot of playing stupid when this kind of thing comes up, because then I'm not attacking them and I'm not getting into a conflict. I just kind of pretend that I'm, 22 and blonde and in every sitcom in the world, and I just don't understand, so I just kind of put on a sitcom persona and try to go with it that way. So that's my way of handling it. There's probably 10 other ways, but we want you to think about it now so that you're prepared for Memorial Day and 4th of July and summer vacations.
Absolutely. Okay. So get out your load of bananas. You are, definitely in monkey tending territory. And we hope that we have given you some things to think about, that we have allowed you the opportunity to go, because if you are at the stage, hello@colorfulclipboard.com is our email. And please shoot us an email and let us help you out. If you need to take advantage of one of our coaching opportunities and have us coach you through this scenario because you just don't do confrontation and you realize that your handbook has nothing related to vacations in it, this is definitely going to be well worth your time and your money, because we want you to still be here at the end of summer. You have 4 months. So let's make the best of the next 4 months. And with that, thank you so much for listening. And
if you enjoyed the show, please take time to write us a review on your favorite podcast app. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Colorful Clipboards. Connect with us on social media @Colorful Clipboard, or send us an email to hello@colorfulclipboards.
Send us your voicemail with your own questions and stories. If you want to keep learning with us, visit Texas Director, where we continue to have seminars, licensing, programs, and more. This show has been made by me, Carrie Casey, and Kate Young, with assistance from Hallie Casey and Marie Young. If you learned something today, share the show.